The rich are leaving the UK. This has been happening for a few years. It's been going on. It's been going on for a few years. It's happening a bit more in the past year or so. Some people are very happy with this, and I think it's pretty safe to predict that it's not going to stop next week when the Labour Party wins what might be the biggest majority in the history of this country, or at least in many, many years. Welcome to the reality show. Yeah, you think when we talk about something that isn't the war, we'll be a bit more optimistic. Not exactly for this show, but we'll try. And at least I think there's some humor in reading the article that the op-ed that we're going to go through, an op-ed from The Guardian. I'm joined by Anders, Marco, Richard. Hey guys. Marco, I'll go to you first. You are living in the UK and you moved here. Are you reconsidering that move?
No, I'm one of the rich people who stays here. Um, well, I mean, this whole thing all springs from a consultancy firm who did a couple of reports. They do a report every year and see what the net inflow outflow of people with a net worth, a cash reserves or whatever, of more than 1 million US dollars, which is about what, 800,000 pounds here, which is relatively a small amount of money, really. But let's pretend these are millionaires for real. Well, first of all, the article from the Guardian. There was an article in 2021 where the Guardian was bitching about the fact that Britain has got too many millionaires, and at the time they were quoting something like 875,000 people with net worth over the million, above the million, and then this press release, this consultancy is saying that in 2023, there were 651,000 millionaires. However, between 17 and 23, the same people are saying there's 16,500 millionaires left. So, here somebody is either not counting the same things or making things up. However, the most important thing is that yes, people tend to move, especially if you're a millionaire, if you're a business person, if you have to set up shop somewhere, of course you're more likely to move in places with lower taxation or where infrastructure is better or whatever. But the idea that millionaires will leave Britain because Labour is against it, well, let's not forget Labour and the Conservatives, what matters, they are massively statist parties. So lots of the millionaires are actually from the mixed economy, which benefits from statism. So I don't think we're going to see a big outflow of millionaires at all.
Yeah, for my part, I mean, when I read certainly the op-ed or even the data from the management company, the investment company that have provided it, I think it merits the intellectual equivalent of blowing a raspberry, quite honestly. And when you look at it, there's so much that's wrong with it. It's a lot of it, and certainly the reasons given for it fall squarely into the category of the arbitrary. They're not even wrong. So we can pick apart as to why those are and why people have picked their favorite reasons, because I think that's part of what's going on here. As Marco said, according to another Guardian article from a few years ago, 1 in 10 Londoners is already one of these millionaires anyway. And what both this article and the op-ed seem to forget is that London is where you come to make your money. They always seem to assume that you've arrived with your money and you're leaving with your money, or that money has come from the blue yonder or everybody else in the country that you've squirreled it from or suckered it off instead of actually creating it yourself. So that's a big part of the problem here, is that there's no recognition of the achievement of making money in the first place. It's just, I mean, to be honest, when we get to the op-ed, it's just like the whole thing was written by ChatGPT and somebody's taken the 2 standard Guardian lines that go into any op-ed, which is, isn't Britain rubbish and aren't rich people greedy meanies, and asked it to write another article. So, and that's the dirge it's produced at the end. and of course they've asked it to cover the standard things that the Guardian loves to cover as little tick marks along the way, those little bingo marks that they like. So please cover Brexit, it's a bad thing. Please cover well, the Prime Minister's wife, for example, as a non-dom. Let's kick her. And also, why not mention on the way Rule Britannia, that patriotic song that they like to mock at every opportunity as well. So all of that is in there. It's a nice big soup of anti-British, anti-rich gloop. And you're going to hear some choice phrases from it in this episode.
Yeah, thanks for all the spoilers. I was, we were going to go through it, but yeah, there are no, you didn't spoil the plot. So, Anders, your thoughts on people leaving the UK?
Well, so I'm kind of the outsider looking in here, being American. And by the way, I love Rule Britannia. So love those promenade concerts. Is that what they're called? And everybody's standing up and stomping up and down. That's great fun. Anyhow, I think there are great causes for optimism here. You sound a little bit hesitant initially, but being American here, we're welcoming every English British millionaire that wants to leave the home country. So in that sense, I'm optimistic. Where I think we may want to broaden the discussion a little bit, and I think people leaving, coming and going, whether they're millionaires or not, I think that is a good indicator, and it's basically good because it's competition between countries, and then it kind of, in the long run, puts a little bit of a lid on the statist ambitions of some countries, at least, because when they lose their best and their brightest, eventually they have to start to at least make minor corrections to attract them. We saw this back in the 60s and 70s when I think Britain had its last great brain drain, and I believe even Ayn Rand wrote an article about it. The title escapes me right now. So this is nothing new. We've seen it many times before, and from an American's point of view, I would like to see more of this. Unfortunately, we're not letting the people in over here. That's our problem. I think Britain did a really smart move with Hong Kong, and I think that you're letting Hong Kongers in. So it would be interesting to see, and I haven't checked those stats, but how many Hong Kongers have come to Britain since China took over there. And the Canadians are doing the same thing. I think a lot of Hong Kong people have moved to Canada and are still moving. Unfortunately, the US put a stop to that too. We could have benefited greatly from welcoming a lot of Hong Kong natives to our country. But yeah, so bottom line, I think this is the articles, I agree with Mark Richard said, but as a phenomenon in itself, I think countries competing with one another in terms of the best and the brightest is a good thing.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think any of the people we're talking about would have a problem moving to the US. I think an investor visa is probably relatively easy, but yeah, I think the US is missing out on the future rich. Let's call it that.
Yep.
Thank you, Zara, for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you, Robert Naser, for the super chat, and thank you, Robert, for being a YouTube member for 26 months. Whenever I see these, from longtime members, I'm surprised that we've had YouTube memberships for so long. But Robert says, leaving the UK is one thing, but where are people going? Is any place in Europe better? Unless they're coming to the US, why bother? It's a good question. I don't think any place in Europe is currently better in terms of, let's say, the life you can live materially. But I think there are places probably in Eastern and maybe Central Europe that are better politically, and maybe there's more of a future there than there is here. I don't think that's where many of the super rich are moving, but yeah. And I see a few comments about voting reform UK. I don't know if we're going to do a whole episode about this. or not, but we have some disagreements about that. So maybe we'll get to that at some point. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, actually, Marco, and then we'll go around one more time, and then we'll go to the article.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the granularity of the data in the report is not sufficient for you to actually make up a mind about what actually happens. But the summary suggests that there is a big number of, well, I don't know the number, but there are a number of people who are going to so-called retirement location, like the coast in the Ligurian coast in Italy, I think. Somewhere in Spain, in the Costa del Sol, Cano area, which are the traditional location where people retiring from Britain tend to go to. And the fact that the euro right now, the euro right now is fairly weak, probably makes it more attractive, especially if you sell your family house, your kids have fled the nest, you sell the house, you know, the residential market for housing here is actually quite buoyant still. So you could actually go away and live your last few years somewhere in Europe. But the probably more proactive, more productive people seem to be going to Florida, probably tax rate, and of course, you know, it's the United States, and some other people to Dubai, because of the of the lack of taxation for inherited, what's it called, income tax. Now you could argue that I'd rather pay tax than go to the UA, but that's a different issue. And as for the vote here, the alternative for voting, if you don't want to vote the two usual suspect, Labour or Conservatives here, well, you either vote reform or you start chewing your ballot box, your ballot in the ballot box. So I don't know, that the future isn't exactly bright, but we'll make do, I think. Yeah.
Chewing your ballot is the best idea I've heard so far about what to do next Thursday in the election. But yeah,
It takes
great.
a while. Yeah.
And it's quite bitter. Yeah. Right. For my part, what I saw in this report, so the problem with this report is it's rather crude, to say the least. The data is rather top of the line. So I think it's a bit of a summary thing. So what you really need to do if you wanted to really work from this data would be understand the data, validate the data, work out all its different categories, because it's lumping together people who've taken their money and retired and moved to some retirement destination with their $1 million, and people who've left the country to do a bit of work for who knows how long somewhere else in the world, possibly with the intention of returning in 2 years. So you can't, and to assume that it means a brain drain, I think, is also a little bit of a leap there. I'm not sure you've got the evidence that it's a brain drain, because you've also got an enormous amount of people who are coming to the UK with their brains from all across the world and using the opportunities here, the businesses here, the contacts here to make the money and make the best of their lives. So I've got but some of the destinations that people are going to include things in Europe, places like Monaco, although I think you needed more than $1 million to get past lunch in Monaco. Places like Geneva, places like Singapore, but they come with downsides, to say the least. Different ones in different cases. But the problem is, what happens with this kind of data is that people don't actually care about the data itself or understanding it. They want to accept its conclusions on faith because they like the sound of it, that people are leaving Britain because they're millionaires. And then they use it like a bowling ball to knock down their favorite Skittles with. And that's what the guy in this article is doing when we get to it. So problem is garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? And if the data itself is dodgy to start with, or just insufficient to make the conclusions that are drawn from it, then you've got to be aware of that. But of course, statistics in the age we live in people don't care to look under the bonnet. They just want to spout the statistic if it makes their case, regardless of its validity.
Anders.
Yeah, I'm curious if does this represent a trend? Is it an upward tick, or have millionaires always moved in and out? I mean, we don't hear much about how many moved into the UK, and I mean, was there a significant uptick after Brexit, for instance, or some other event or something? I mean, because this focused, if I read the article correctly, was the last 3 years or something that I didn't mention how many had moved out, but yeah, I don't know if they mention anything about more long-term trends.
And of course, the elephant in the room here is also the fact that Britain was in bed with the oligarchs from Russia, and since they invaded Ukraine, we kicked out lots of them, and some of the assets have been frozen. So just that in itself will count for a good chunk of millionaires that suddenly disappeared. But yeah, I think if you look at the previous report that this consultancy did, you can probably see a trend. There's probably not uptick lately, but I don't see any meaningful comparison between the two. Again, you would have to have access to the data and do something a proper check, but you kind of see a little bit of increase, but I don't think it's really significant. There's so much stuff in there, as Richard pointed out. You're lumping together retirees, and we have the boomer generation who are just getting into retirement now, so that might affect as well, and people who are producers that actually move for economic reasons. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, and the other elephant in the room, which we can't miss, just while we're mentioning elephants, is COVID and lockdowns, of course, and the furlough and the money spraying around to anybody and everybody without any need to prove that people were use the word entitled in inverted commas, entitled to it. So a lot of that has created a lot of extra wealth. So even people who live in fairly modest homes have also been buying lots of second homes abroad in Spain and France and Greece and etc. So it's the idea that it's left with that it's a land of paupers is nonsense.
Thank you, Equal to Reality, for being a member for 26 months. Equal to Reality says, depending on how hard Labour go on their manifesto, I think we will get a brain drain. I might even hurry up and move. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I thought this episode a week before the election is good. To whatever extent there is a brain drain or a money drain, there will be a lot of that once Labour are in, and certainly once they start doing what they want to do. By the way, the person who said vote reform also said earlier in the chat about the fact that people are leaving. Good, get the fuck out. Not loyalty to the nation, get the fuck out. I love how it's always written in perfect grammar like that and with swear words. Yeah, look, the idea that if the country is getting worse off and there are places that are better for you, you should sacrifice your own life out of loyalty to a place that you happen to have been born in is not rational and not what a person should do. All right, should we get to this the article? Yeah, again, whether or not there is a brain drain, it's an opportunity to write a open letter, which I'm sure is in the eyes of the person who wrote it, the wittiest thing ever written. So let's get to it. This is Nels Abbey writing. The title is Britain's millionaires are fleeing. Good night and good luck, I say. If the UK seems less attractive to rich people who crave sunny tax havens, so be it. And then the letter starts. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Loads-a-Dush, I see you are leaving us. According to the people whose job it is to count our resident millionaires, and in parentheses, he says, proper millionaires, not just a couple with a gentrified house in Hackney. You're upping sticks and heading to places more amenable. Henley and Partners, which makes a fine living cassetting the wealthy, claims that between 2017 and 2023, 16,500 millionaires migrated from the UK. Henley, the investment migration consultancy seems perturbed. Provisional estimates for 2024 are even more concerning, with a massive net outflow of 9,500 millionaires projected for this year alone, it says. As fate would have it, fewer millionaires fled Russia in 2022 as it invaded Ukraine and became a sanctions piñata than are expected to leave the UK this year. I don't know. I'm sure some of you are talented. Some will sponsor public things in return for an engraved name check. Some will allow a little wealth to trickle down while living high on the hog. Maybe those of us left behind will miss some of that. But will we miss you? I don't know. All right, let's stop there because that last paragraph is kind of the way such people think in a nutshell. First of all, they want rich people to donate, but they still want to shit on them for doing so and having their names mentioned. They say maybe some of it will trickle down. This is a person who I don't know who it is, who he is, the author. I'm guessing he has never created a job, but he likes to shit on those who have created many jobs. If you're a self-made millionaire or multimillionaire, you will have almost certainly created jobs. So that's the maybe you allowed some of it to trickle down part. And yeah, he's not going to miss them, but he is going to miss hating them and also taxing them to the point where they end up wanting to leave. Yeah, any thoughts on that first part, Marco?
Yeah, lots of thoughts. First of all, we are talking, this is The Guardian, yeah? So this guy, who is he to presume the gender of the Lodzadosh people? Really? Mr. and Mrs., how do you know? But never mind, let's ignore that big boo-boo. I mean, he opens the article talking about proper millionaires because really, I mean, are numbers, or there are proper numbers that these socialists want to be like to shit on, and other numbers that it's a poor people's number, so these are better. So if you made millions by an increase in housing market, you're not rich. But if you made money by producing, generating income and generating jobs, hiring things, producing stuff, selling things, you're a bad millionaire. So already this kind of attitude is more than annoying. Yeah, I mean, this guy allegedly used to work in a bank. I don't know exactly what he did and who he is and what he does. But the fact that he calls himself a banker opens to all sorts of, it could have been from the post room to the trading floor. So, but the kind of attitude, the kind of stuff he doesn't know about the economy suggests to me more the post room than the trading floor, but never mind. The kind of hate he manages to come across to produce in the Street of Peace is just, he thinks it's so funny, but actually it's quite pathetic.
I mean, that dig that he makes about gentrified houses in Hackney not being proper millionaires. There isn't a gentrified house in Hackney that isn't worth $1 million, quite frankly. I challenge anyone to find one. In fact, I looked up the London figures for property at the moment, just to give you an idea of why this threshold, which a millionaire always sounds like a big number, but in UK and London terms, and London's not the only city of this level. There's a fair few of them, but the overall average price of a property in London is £720,000, which, when turned into dollars, is not far off $1 million, as the average property price paid in London right now. The average terraced house in London is over £1,832,000. That's from Rightmove. So it's not special to meet this threshold, and there's a massive difference, quite honestly. If you're talking about quote unquote rich people, there's a massive difference with $1 million and $10 million in terms of the capacity for what you can do with it, where you can move to, and what options it opens up to you. And even passing that out is necessary to understand this, I think. Yeah, it's the snidey nature of it all, isn't it? This is standard Guardian fare, snide and sneering, and full of envy, dripping with derision, and of course at the same time would like some of it for himself. But he's not getting it from me.
Just Marco, on the point of how does he know it's a Mr. and Mrs. I was gonna make some comment about obviously it has to be, you know, rich white man, but then I looked him up quickly, and apparently he's the author of what's it called? Think Like a White Man. So yeah, again, you know, the racism there is not a surprise. The assumption that it's male, straight, and white, although he doesn't say that, is I think implied. Anders.
Yeah, so I'm not a regular Guardian reader, but like Marco said, or Richard said, it's it's we see this quite frequently all over the left-leaning press, the snarky commentary, quite frankly, it's quite tiresome, and it is an expression of hatred of the good for being the good, because deep down, or however, well, on some level, this person obviously knows that if there is truth to this, and if it is a trend that continues, well, yeah, then that is undermining the narrative, if you like. Socialism is can only go on for us until you run out of other people's money, and yeah, eventually we'll do that. Yeah, no, don't really have much other comment on this article. Mainly tired, snarky, and quite frankly, not really worth a lot of attention.
Well, with your permission, I will give it some more attention. I don't think we're going to make it through the whole thing, but yeah. But Apollo Zeus makes a good point that envy turns into violence, and yeah, there's kind of an underlying tone when people talk when people write in the Guardian. I think there's an underlying tone of violence against those who have succeeded financially in life. When when it trickles down, when those ideas trickle down to the Guardian reading public, I think there's it's more explicit. You see signs and like kill the rich, eat the rich. Like you see stuff like that when you see the activists who don't have this kind of subtlety that a newspaper like the Guardian has. But I think you see that here, and here's the next paragraph. Again, we're not going to make it through the whole thing, but he continues. We read a lot about people who help migrants move around, and they come in all shapes and sizes. One kind capitalizes on dehumanized people desperate to reach a friendly, safe, and secure nation where they hope to contribute and build a new life. The other quite legally helps the ultra-wealthy, such as yourselves, flee to nations which are much more tax efficient with far less sticky red tape. The former will dump you on a small dinghy, the latter will usher you onto a super yacht. Again, there's a lot in there. So he's comparing those who, provide a service for people who want to move from one country to another, if they have money, to the people who load migrants onto boats that often sink, and we hear very often about people dying in such situations. And then, of course, he adds that those people are people who want to contribute. I don't know how many people. The idea that if you're actually a good person coming from a horrible country to a place like the UK, that you're doing so to contribute is ridiculous. I mean, you're coming here because it's a better place and you want to live a better life, just like a rich person does that when they can do that. It's for exactly the same reasons. Now, many of the people who come on those boats are not necessarily good people, and the Guardian knows this. And so it's interesting to see that they are almost by that's kind of materialism in a nutshell. They're good because they have nothing. That's the Marxist approach. They're good because they're not of means, and then when those who are of means are evil people, and we should get rid of them. Marco.
Yeah, I mean, these lefties, when they write this kind of snidey articles, actually let out something that they don't really mean to say, probably. Because, for example, calling Britain friend, safe and secure country goes totally against the narrative that Britain is a bunch of racist, imperialist, white, nasty people who hate everybody under the sun. Yet we are suddenly friendly, safe and secure when it comes to bringing over dinghies of people who want to escape France. Because that's what we're talking about. The same people who argue we should increase the state, the size of the welfare state, and give these people coming over from France everything for free because poor people come from a dinghy, are the same people who just snide at the millionaires who produce and give jobs to the same people that they're trying to protect. So yeah, all this kind of contradictions come through, but it's a spade load, really. It's just laughable every time you read this kind of pieces.
And even the core things that I mentioned before that the Guardian likes to do, isn't Britain rubbish, and aren't rich people greedy meanies? That those two contradict each other because they're kind of arguing that isn't Britain rubbish, because it's getting poorer, and yet you also want it to get poorer because you don't like rich people. So where do you want to live? I don't get it, quite honestly. It's nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, so you're saying the other quite legally helps the ultra wealthy, such as yourself, flee to nations which are much more tax efficient, far less sticky red tape. Yeah, good for them. Quite legally, he puts that in there. I assume as just a comment. It kind of implies that he doesn't think that it should be legal. No, because we should stop these people from fleeing the country. But overall, I mean, so this company who issued this report with the stats, they are supposedly then helping people, facilitating their moves wherever they go in the world, and that's just another example of a lubricant that is helping the markets, and they're bashing them. He's bashing them here, just like a lot of people are bashing people who trade in options or derivatives, and it's the old classic Marxist notion that if you don't work with your hands, you don't really produce anything and such. And then lastly, I want to say, I mean, it's hyperbole, usher you onto a super yacht, and back to the comment that I don't know what the suburb of London was that you mentioned, where you get $1 million home, that won't get you very far when it comes to getting on a super yacht, that's for sure.
Yeah. Was that Hackney that he mentioned?
It was Hackney, yeah. Which is your equivalent of like hipster town. So it's that mixture that only somewhere like London or New York can do, which is with grimy and foul at the same time as being very expensive. And it's for hip to live in, yes. And
it's gentrifying, right? That's what we call it here. Yeah.
Yeah, some of us would not move to Hackney even if it wasn't expensive. So yeah, for Hackney to be expensive says a lot about what millionaires are compared to what this guy is presenting. Thank you, Larasetto, for the super chat. Larasetto asks, did Britain ever actually recover from World War II? Yes, I mean Britain recovered also, as Anders mentioned, from the policies of the 70s. It recovered with Margaret Thatcher, and now we're going in the opposite direction very, very quickly, and we're going to accelerate the speed of that starting next week. Thank you, Equal to Reality, for the super chat. Equal to Reality says, from now on, can we please get the link to any articles put in the description? Yes, we will have the link to the article. This article is, I mentioned the title, but let me see what it is. It's Britain's Millionaires Are Fleeing. Good night and good luck, I say. So you can look it up, but we will put it in the description as well. All right, there's one paragraph that annoys me a bit more, but I'll read it anyway, and we can talk about it. So I'm skipping some of this, but he says, "You are a funny bunch. Some of you are the citizens of nowhere who Theresa May pointed her finger at, but others are the type who were desperate to take back control." This is a Brexit reference. Who fly a crisply ironed Union Jack on a neatly manicured lawn, who bailed out Rule Britannia during last night of the proms, but do everything they can to shrink their tax exposure. But there is no more patriotic act than paying your taxes, contributing to the continued growth, prosperity, and security of the land that might have made you wealthy, that schooled your children, that sustained your staff. So fleeing to what is basically a sauna with pretty skyscrapers is, in order to avoid paying taxes, is not really a good look. The sauna part is a reference to the fact that many of them are moving to the Gulf, and but yes, so much in that paragraph annoys me. First of all, I like how he says paying taxes is patriotic, and he says it as a good thing, but he mentioned having a flag of the country you live in on your lawn is a bad thing. So yeah, this guy, yeah, he contradicts himself basically as in pretty much every time he writes, in every sentence, and okay, let me get back to the specifics of what exactly he says here. He refers to taxes as contributing to the continued growth, prosperity, and security of so no, and he mentions school your children. Hopefully, people with enough money to do so do not send their children to government schools. But no, prosperity happens despite taxes, not because of taxes. It's not government that invents new things, creates new, products and services, employs people. Yeah, government employs people often who should not be employed and would not be employed on a free market. So yeah, it's that's kind of classic left-wing thinking about what the economy is, the kind of thinking that whenever tried and to whatever extent tried fails, and yet they continue to push that as what the ideal is. Marco.
Yeah, the section you just read is my favorite. There is so much in there. First of all, he calls Dubai a sauna with pretty skyscrapers. Well, first of all, the skyscrapers became because lots of Westerners went there and built them. But to focus on the sauna, not on the kind of Islamic dictatorship that these places are, you missed a trick there. But of course, these leftists don't see the dictatorship as a problem. So I can forgive him for having missed that point. And also, this is also the bit that makes me think he wasn't really working on a trading floor, because he seems to think that paying tax will make people rich. Well, it's actually the opposite. But it's a leftist view of how the economy works. You steal money from people, and suddenly we're all richer. Really, well done. And then the patriotic pop, having a go at the patriotism of Britain. That's exactly, I think it encapsulates why the Reform Party was born in the first place. This is the typical urban lefty, middle-class, well-off person who snides at everybody who's proud of Britain, its achievement, what it stands for, the kind of freedom it's been, spreading across the world through the empire, the rule of law, all this kind of stuff. This sniding at somebody flying the Union Jack. Imagine laughing at somebody in the United States for flying the stars
and stripes.
Stars and stripes. Sorry, that would never happen. But here in Britain is the sport of the lefties, and this is exactly the kind of attitude that people in Britain are so fed up about and are absolutely quite angry about it. And that's probably the kind of people who are going to vote for reform, because frankly, if you have the chance to flick the finger to these obnoxious, arrogant idiots, that's a chance for you to do it. And at the same time, it doesn't seem to have received the memo from the Labour Party, because up to now, the Labour Party was quite snidey about flying the flag. There was a funny incident where two presenters on the BBC were literally laughing live at a minister of the state during an interview because he had a big flag behind him. And then since Nigel Farage and the victory and Brexit, the Labour Party realized actually lots of our supporters are fairly patriotic. So now we stick the flag everywhere. So now if you get a leaflet from the Labour Party, there's going to be a piece of a Union Jack on it, when they were laughing at it openly just a few months ago. How much more wrong can you get?
And a lot of this is evident in the election campaign at the moment. Like Mark has said about those leaflets, that's absolutely true. The leaflet lands on your mat from the other end of the hallway. You think it's going to be for reform. You pick it up, it's from Labour. That's the way that things have changed, and the fact that they are trying to win back people who voted for Brexit, while of course as soon as they're in power, renegotiating with the EU and making sure it's even less of a Brexit than it is already. But before I go down the side alley of that topic, which is not what we're here to talk about, it also reflects this article also reflects a lot of what's in the campaign at the moment in the UK, which is the two main leaders, like Keir Starmer for the Labour Party, Rishi Sunak for the Conservatives, trying to outdo each other for their poor people credentials. So the Labour Party leader is constantly telling us, and it's been edited together, and you can see this as he's done it in endless interviews, talking about, my dad was a tool maker. My dad was a tool maker. My dad was a tool maker, he says in interview after interview, with all sorts of different backgrounds. In the same way that Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, in his first campaign, his dad was a bus driver. His dad was a bus driver. And that was his campaign for why he was so very humble and therefore deserved to run the city of London. And of course, Rishi Sunak, who is married to a very wealthy woman and is wealthy in his own right, which is fine, but not in the lefties' eyes, of course. He's been talking about how he couldn't have Sky TV when he was growing up as a kid, because he was asked a question: what did you go without as a child? Because that's how you decide how you interview your leaders for running the country, is you try and see how much they've suffered, like the people of the country, in order to see whether they've got the credentials to run it and the understanding of what it's like to be poor. Because being rich is not something that's good. It's something to be ashamed of. It's something to hide from, and it's something to distract from. And you pinpoint some aspect of your life where you were suffering and poor, because that's when you were virtuous. I'm afraid that's the state of the culture, which is enough to make you headbutt the wall.
Anders.
I grew up with 2 TV channels. I'm one up on Rishi Sunak there.
Wow, yeah. Can you lead us then? Can you win?
Yeah. Anyhow, no more patriotic act than paying your taxes. I would turn the tables on him and say that there is no more patriotic tax than trying to avoid paying as much taxes as you can while not exposing yourself to going to prison or anything like that. So, and yeah, it's doesn't really deserve any more comment. School your children, yeah, as you said, Razi. The only thing he excluded here, I think, he didn't praise the NHS. That would have probably completed the equation. And then, but what I would say, I think there is a little bit of, it's a little tragic that, you know, the only places or one of the few places that you can go to is these kingdoms in the Middle East, these on the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea there, because yeah, it's what they've done in Dubai. It's in some ways amazing, but it's really sad that that's where people have to go to avoid paying taxes here and supposedly, I guess, experience some more freedom. I'm not exactly sure what, except for taxes, are driving people to move there, because I mean, we know that it's certainly the center of everything that we fear will come closer to us, despite their financial prosperity in many places. So I think that is in a way, is a verdict on Western countries, that people actually have to move there in order to experience what they think is a better life.
Yeah, so sorry. That's actually quite interesting point, because have you ever heard the left in the West criticize those states for not having income tax? Here, if you try and reduce the tax burden, you're an enemy of the state, because, well, literally, because you're trying to kill children and not provide school and services and stuff like that. But you know, those states that provide zero taxation, if you go there and they are successful, still they're not, first of all, they're not criticized by the left. They argue the opposite in the West, and second, they're not shown as, look at these places, they haven't got taxation, look how rich and wealthy and full of people, how people want to flock there. Isn't that the perfect argument for get rid of income tax in the first place?
Yeah, by the way, what's clearly, I think, missing in that part of the criticism, there are, you know, there's valid criticism for people who move to such places, but you're not going to hear it from the Guardian, because, you know, the fact that you have no individual rights, you're allowed certain pretend freedoms, you know, until the whoever is the ruler decides to take it away from you. That's irrelevant. I mean, you don't see any mention of the fact that in Dubai, homosexuality is illegal. In Dubai, if you know, we've talked about cases where women got arrested when they showed up at a police station to report that they had been raped because they had sex outside of marriage, which is illegal regardless of consent. So, but that kind of criticism doesn't show up there, and that's what I would say. I don't understand. I mean, we know people who moved, you know, who moved to Dubai not because they're super wealthy and trying to hide their money, but because they, you know, have better paying jobs there and no taxes. So twice, you know, twice the benefit there. But yeah, I still think it's short term. I think Dubai and generally the Emirates and Qatar are still savages with skyscrapers and not places that I would want to go to. Thank you, Jonathan, for both of the super chats. Thank you, Christopher, for the super chat. Back on the flag issue, James Valiant says, some say the US flag is a white nationalist symbol. Yeah, you have that in the US, but I think Marco's point is correct. You know, I just came back from a few weeks in the US and you see the flag everywhere. Here, you don't really see that. Now you see the Union Jack a little bit, the England flag, because there's a football tournament going on and there's, you know, people are expressing their support for the country in you know, in that way. But yeah, you don't, it's not a common thing. We have a friend, a French friend, who told me that he sees the flag here a lot more than he sees it in France. So, you know, there are maybe places where it's worse, but yeah, it's shocking that something like this can be written in one of the most popular newspapers in the country, and that's just the point that certainly the typical Guardian reader would, would look at and say, of course, it's I don't know, racist, or I don't know what exactly they would say about flying the flag, but it's not something that many people in the country would ever consider doing because they would think that it is wrong.
I mean, I think you can certainly criticize people for flying the flag. I mean, you have to ask them, so why are you flying the flag? And I suspect that both here in the US and my native Sweden and most places, they're flying the flag because it's because they're born in the country and they lived in the country, and it is in most cases not based on any fundamental understanding or the foundation of the country. I mean, in the US, there are some people who fly it for true patriotic reasons because they know the cause of the foundation of the country and so on and so forth. But in most countries, flying the flag is more of a nationalist expression than anything else. So to that extent, I think there is some valid criticism too.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add to what Anders said there, which is that there are many people in London, more people flying the PLO flag than are flying the Union Jack, and the flying of that is exactly about their values, unfortunately. But yes, you're absolutely right. It is about values that counts, even if it displays the wrong values and shows them up to the rest of us.
And to be fair, here in Britain, if you see the Union Jack, it's usually not a nationalist thing, but it's a patriotic. It's because there's still the sense. I come from Europe, and I can tell there's still the kind of sense of freedom here. People still relish the fact that Britain is freer than any other country in mainland Europe. And when people fly the Union Jack, they're celebrating that tradition of freedom, which eventually, created the United States. Well, by the back door, but it's that kind of sentiment, I think, is represented still by the Union Jack.
Yeah, and that's good to the extent that is true.
Yeah, and I agree. People can fly the flag for the wrong reasons. Like he mentions Brexit as well, obviously is a bad thing, but people definitely voted for Brexit for the wrong reasons. Oddly enough, the Guardian, I don't think the Guardian is aware. I think there's like two types of left. There's the kind of elitist left-wing people like the Guardian writers and readers, and then there's the actual people who are, the working class and want their jobs protected and all that, and they massively voted for Brexit overwhelmingly. Unite, the main union in this country, the biggest union, was very clear on being in favor of Brexit. Jeremy Corbyn, who's generally a very principled politician with all the wrong principles, the one principle that it seems that he was, he didn't really want to talk about was he was probably pro-Brexit as well. He just didn't talk about it. But yeah, it is, that there was left-wing reasons to vote for Brexit, and actually I think the way Brexit has been implemented, it's more in line with the values of leftists who voted for it than with the values of anybody who voted for it for actual freedom. Yeah, keeping the immigrants out is, like, if you're going to be consistent, it is a left-wing position to want to keep the immigrants out. All right, any parting thoughts, Marco?
Well, we know that immigration is a good thing if it's done. I mean, immigration is not a problem if you haven't got lots of statist welfare on the other side that attracts the wrong kind of immigrants. But if somebody wants to come over here, contribute to the sense of life of the nation and to the economic situation, also to make their own life better, why should we have done? But I don't get that one. The problem is that we're getting parasitic, cultures and stuff like that who come here just to get the benefit. but nobody ever argues the benefits are the problem. They always blame immigration. So that's part of a conversation that has never really taken place in Britain, as far as I can tell. And also, if you're a millionaire, well, come, stay, do whatever you want, just make more millions.
I was just going to make my finishing words to mention whenever Ayn Rand writes about England, because of the fact she died in 1982, she's always writing predominantly about the 70s and the 60s, but certainly the 70s, and describing what a socialist basket case England was back then. And of course, it's a shame that she didn't see some of the Thatcher years and the turnaround that took place during the 1980s. But of course, now we're heading back towards the socialist basket case that she was writing about anyway, and she's going to be right once more. So she's always right in the end, unfortunately, when it comes to this depiction of England, because England hasn't learned the lessons even after being shown the turnaround of the 1980s. And it's going to have to go through that exercise all over again. And please, can we start soon?
Yeah, I would have loved Ayn Rand's commentary on Margaret Thatcher. I'm sure she would have had more positive things to say than about her predecessors, but I'm sure she would have thrown us a few curveballs as well, just like she did with Ronald Reagan here in the US and such. I sent the link to Daniel for her article, The Brain Drain. It's actually available as a talk on ARI campus, so you could add that perhaps to the show notes as well, because I think that provides good context for this conversation.
Yeah, well, we'll do that. And thanks guys for joining me. Thanks everybody for watching. Tomorrow on the Daily Objective, we are talking about the Palestinian people versus pro-Palestinian activists. And then on the reality show, I don't know if I should say unfortunately, but we will be talking about the debate. We will have a debate recap. We will be watching the debate between Biden and Trump and saying whatever there is to say about that. Marco, Richard, where can people find more of your work?
On the Briefly Objective, where you find short edited material based on this channel, but with visuals to go with it for your social media feeds. Links down below. So please like and subscribe as we raise the numbers on the viewership on that and spread the word.
And Anders, where can people find more from you?
You can find my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, on any Amazon outlet around the world. And I'm also at andersingemarsson.substack.com.
I'm Razi Ginzberg on X. Thanks everybody again, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.